Yes, good evening, people. Right here, right now, just in time. And once again, we are continuing our coverage of the Women's T20 Cricket World Cup 2026. This is the only World Cup in which I am interested in today. It's an old enemy clash. England versus Scotland, live from the Headingley Cricket Ground in Leeds, in England, in the United Kingdom. And of course, with Scotland's men's team just coming up short against Morocco in the Football World Cup, maybe the Bonnie Lasses of the cricket team will have some better luck. Now, I'm just going to make sure that I get the thing right, and I can just tell you right now that yeah, of course, their teams will be coming up very soon, but I can tell you that Catherine Bryce has won the toss, and once again, she has made no hesitation in opting to field first. So they ran the West Indies quite reasonably close, of course, in their previous game, and will have been a bit disappointed to have just come up short. But once again, I can tell you right now that there have been two changes, of course, that they've made. Pippa Sproul and Hannah Rainey have come in for Rachel Slater and Elsa Lister. I'm quite surprised that they would even consider doing that, to be honest with you, because both of those players were quite key in making sure that they ran them very close indeed. Slater bowled magnificently, and of course Lister had a brilliant performance with the bat. And of course, I'm just going to make these changes right now. So obviously there's no Rachel Slater, but there is Hannah Rainey, of course. And instead of Elsa Lister, there is a Pippa Sproul. Okay, and the worst part about making these lineup changes is that obviously with the banners, the limits the way they are, they had to got to make sure that you keep the shape just about right. And of course, the big change, of course, as far as England is concerned, is that Skipper Brunt is out. So I can tell you right now that Sophia Dunkley will be coming into the team, and she actually takes Captain Skipper Brunt's place at one drop. So just making sure that that's all taken care of. Amy Jones, wicket keeper, Sophia Dunkley, Alice Capsey, Heather Knight, Freya Kemp, Danny Gibson, Charlie Dean, Sophie Eccleston, Lindsay Smith, we are just about to start, so I am here on time. So I'm just going to make sure that I get this lineup done and dusted. Had to actually run a couple of errands, of course. So two changes for Scotland. One very big change, of course, for England with Sophia Dunkley coming in. And Charlie Dean, the off-spinner, will be captaining the team. And we've got Jean-Louis Brand in the building. Hello to you, Boet, or how's it, as you would say. And obviously, England batting first will be hoping to set a very big total once they come out to bat the way they did against Sri Lanka, of course. And they will certainly be hoping to make sure they have a really big partnership. Of course, against Sri Lanka, it was Skipper Brunt and Amy Jones who put on that brilliant partnership for 135. And that pretty much decided the match as a contest, it has to be said. So, Yeah, just a reminder, Scotland winning the toss and choosing to field. It is, of course, England versus Scotland live from Headingley. Continued coverage of the Cricket World Cup. The T20 version on the women's side, live right here on the Coach's Corner. Not the Coach's Corner, the Sports Hub, I should say. I like the Coach's Corner. It sort of had a nicer ring to it. But we see a huge crowd at Headingley, and obviously England-Scotland clashes are generally not for the faint-hearted. I'd like to think, of course, that with the cricket, you will get a little bit more, dignified conduct. And, of course, yesterday there was a huge cliffhanger, which was played down at the Hampshire Bowl in Southampton. New Zealand just holding on to their status as defending champions, still staying in the tournament, but by the literal skin of their teeth. They were put into bat and somehow managed to get 140, thanks in no small part to the likes of Captain Mealy Kerr, but also ex-captain Susie Bates coming back into the team with an important cameo of 19, including the team's only 6 off the final ball of the innings. And that proved to be crucial because Susie Bates also took an important catch to get rid of the Ireland captain Gabby Lewis, who along with her deputy Orla Prendergast was threatening to take the game away from the White Ferns. And of course she was entrusted to bowl the final over, where Ireland needed 15 and only conceded 10 as Ireland came up just short. So I am here in time, and it is almost time for the anthems, and we see Charlie Dean and Catherine Bryce walking out to the field. And very soon they will be lining up, and it will be time for the anthems. And so a proud moment, of course, for Charlie Dean, given the responsibility of captaining the team for 2 games in a major tournament. I'm sure she'll probably do it justice. But it is time for the anthems, so I will mute my screen and stand as the anthems are about to be played. Flower of Scotland and God Save the King in that order. Both passionately rendered. it's wonderful as well that when they sing the second verse of Flower of Scotland, there are no musical accompaniments, so everyone is sort of encouraged to sing at their full voice, and you feel the power in that. I know that Flower of Scotland's a little bit more nationalistic, but it sounds nice. I always liked that better than Scotland Brave, And of course, just a reminder, this is continued coverage of the Women's T20 Cricket World Cup. And as the ticker says, do not forget to smash a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell if you want updates on what more we have on the channel. Follow us on Instagram at Hanno Sports Hub and Twitter at the same headline. England versus Scotland live from Headingley in Leeds. And Scotland won the toss, and Catherine Bryce had no hesitation in choosing to field. I think they're going to have to make sure that they bat a lot better than when they did against the West Indies. And certainly that middle order crumbling to the West Indies spin, they're going to have to make sure they don't make the same mistake. But ideally as well, when they bowl to England, they're going to have to avoid making some mistakes. It will be difficult because, of course, despite failing in the second game they played against Ireland, White, Hodge and Jones are in quite good form. Sophia Dunkley coming in place of Nat Skipper-Brunt will be a bit of a risk because Dunkley, of course, was dropped for not having the best of form. So she will have a point to prove, especially in these two games. And it is expected that Skipper-Brunt will come back for England's final game against New Zealand, who could actually end up being sent out of the tournament by Scotland themselves. And we see the openers, of course, Jones and White Hodge. Just another reminder that Scotland have made two changes. Out go Rachel Slater and Elsa Lister. In come Pippa Sproul to take Lister's place in the lower middle order. And Hannah Rainey has been selected as a bowler. And she will be batting at number 10, just so you know. And, of course, the one change from England, Sophia Dunkley in, Captain Nat Skipper-Brunt out, and Charlie Dean leads the team. And so England are going to get us underway in a matter of a few minutes. They are 0 for 0 after 0 overs. And they're certainly not a naughty, but a very nice bunch of ladies, as are the Scots and the Irish and everyone who's competing in this tournament. And I will, of course, give you another update on the men's cricket as far as England were concerned. England are currently 181 for 5, needing 282 to win with 5 remaining. A chase of 463 at Headingley will be almost impossible. Joe Root became the second batsman after Sachin Tendulkar to score 14,000 test runs. It'll only be a matter of time before he gets to the magic 15. He is not out on 74, so he is still holding up the ship, is the stand-in and former England captain. Now, of course, we are getting underway. It is Amy Jones to face the first ball of the day. 33 years old, right-handed batswoman. Needs another 174 runs to score 2,000 T20 runs, and she probably might get that in this tournament. And Danny White-Hodge will be at the non-striker's end, 14th best batsman in the world. Another 10 runs will get her to 3,500 T20 international runs. Now, opening the bowling will actually be the former England bowler, Kirsty Gordon, who started her career with Scotland, moved down to England to play for England, and is now back north of the border playing for the Scots. Left arm spin to open proceedings from the looks of it. So, yeah, this should be very exciting. And she is, of course, the first woman to play for two different nations at T20 World Cups. She debuted for England in the 2018 edition. Sadly, her England career never quite got going, but with plenty of experience in the regional and county systems, and she might end up having the number on one or two of her opponents today. Certainly a pretty good cheat code, one might say. And Charlie Dean, of course, saying that England were happy to bat, saying it's a belting pitch, so whichever side plays the best cricket. And it could very well be that as England start proceedings, they are going to want to make sure they started the way they did against Sri Lanka, batting first. So it is the left-arm spin of Kirsty Gordon. And from the looks of it, it will be left arm round the wicket to the right-handed England wicketkeeper Amy Jones, who, unlike New Zealand's counterpart, Izzy Gaze, has had a much better tournament. Izzy Gaze obviously promoted up the order at the expense of Susie Bates, but has not gotten going, and neither, for that matter, has Georgia Plimmer. So with Bates having a crucial turn yesterday, she might end up playing the rest of the tournament. So it is left arm around the wicket from the left arm spinner Kirsty Gordon. She will be bowling to the right-handed Amy Jones. Let's play. And again, and already we have a wicket. First ball. Well, I'll tell you what, nobody would ever have predicted that kind of a start. And just when I was talking about about the form that England's openers were in, Amy Jones plays that sort of a shot. The fielder was kept for that position, took it quite brilliantly, it has to be said. And off the first ball, England have lost a wicket, and the Scots are cock-a-hoop. You know what? If I do regret not being covering the New Zealand-Ireland game yesterday, if only because I didn't think that it would be anywhere near as competitive as it ended up being, already we've got the ingredients for a wonderful cracker. And I've got a good friend of mine who's from Glasgow, proudly Scottish but doesn't like cricket. I think he might be quite happy to know what's going on. In fact, I've got WhatsApp mobile on my PC, so I will, in fact, text him right now. But in comes Sophia Dunkley, already under pressure, facing her first ball, and she plays that straight to the cover fielder. And you can see from the way she played that shot that her timing just hasn't quite come back in yet. So 27 years old, young player, needs another 157 runs to get 1,500 runs in T20 internationals. And that third ball is played right down to mid-on, who has that covered. But we were talking, of course, when Scotland played the West Indies about the catching efficiency of the Scotland ladies, taking over 90% of their catches in the games they played over the past 12 months. And so their fielding has been absolutely magnificent so far. I mean, they made a few mistakes, let a few balls go between their legs for boundaries, but I think you could say the same about every team, really. That's the fourth delivery of the over, and Sophia Dunkley has no hesitation in trying to find the gap on the leg side. She plays that down to square leg and runs through for a single to get off strike. And that brings the first game centurion, so far the tournament's only centurion, Danny White-Hodge, to the crease. Scoreboard on the television needs to be a little bit better now. Last delivery of the over, and that is once again played to the cover fielder. A slight misfield, but they are prevented, of course, from taking the runs. So after one over, England are 1 for 1. 1 run, 1 wicket, 1 over. We've got a Nelson type of situation going on here. So the second bowler will be the elegantly named Gabriella Fontenla, right arm, medium, fastish pace, so to speak, and she will be bowling to the right-handed Sophia Dunkley. We see Alice Capsey and Heather Knight waiting in the wings. And the first delivery is very well bowled, the right line, but it's tipped all the way down to, you could say, where the slip cordon would be, and England are just happy to run for another single. So once again, the bowlers have vindicated Catherine Bryce's decision to bowl first. And I remember Charlie Dean saying that she was very happy to have been given the opportunity to bat first. I wonder what she'll be thinking right now, maybe wondering about the wisdom of having made that sort of statement. Second delivery of the over from Fontenla to White Hodge. Right arm over the wicket. And once again, that line is outstanding. She's definitely getting some good pace. But once again, some excellent fielding prevents them from running more than one. Going all the way down to backward point, and the fielder throws that in. And Nimali Pereira from Sri Lanka will be standing in her 56th T20 International tonight, along with South Africa's Kerim Cluster, who was on duty yesterday evening. And prior to that was doing some good work in the TV room as the third umpire. Third delivery of the over. And caught in two minds about whether to go for the run, eventually Dunkley being sent back. And makes it back. Fourth delivery of the over. We need to start trying to get a move on here. And beautifully bowled. That is a classic outswinger from the right-handed batsman. Completely, went right through Sophia Dunkley there. You can see the seam position she's got working over there. And, oh, that swung beautifully. Headingley's normally considered a place where the bowlers do get to hold their own. And this delivery is played quite well down to backward square leg. Should be two if they can run fast enough. And sure enough, they do. So Sophia Dunkley just getting a little bit into the swing of it, as it were. A somewhat more packed offside field. So there are plenty of gaps on the leg side to be exploited. Certainly that gap over there at, square leg, well short of the fielder at the boundary. Last delivery of the over. And that is also very well bowled, but straight to the fielder. And Sophia Dunkley is being kept honest. So after the second over, England are 5 for 1 after 2 overs, I should say. Of course, I will probably have to take a small break at one particular point to make sure I get some nosh, as we would say in the UK. Another word for food. So once again, we are back with the medium pace, and it is Catherine Bryce who comes back into the attack. Obviously, the tactic of opening the bowling with the spinners has proved to be quite popular in this tournament. It was, of course, very popular in the 1992 World Cup ODI played in New Zealand and Australia. And wow! You take a look at the swing. You talk about the banana in swinger. Catherine Bryce was worked that first delivery beautifully. Danny White Hodge didn't really know what to do there. And of course, we saw how the seamers, in particular Rachel Slater, were able to maintain their lines quite beautifully. And the second delivery, of course, you see once again the prodigious swing, but White Hodge is able to play that all the way down to mid-wicket for a single. So she moves on to 2, having gotten off the mark earlier. And they bowled 33% of their deliveries on a good line and length, which is the highest of all teams in this tournament. So well done to the Scots. Great Scots, you would say. And Catherine Bryce, once again, I mean, she's sort of releasing that delivery from from high. It's sort of going all the way down and swinging all the way down inside the right-handed batswoman. So, I mean, whatever Catherine Bryce thought of when deciding to, bowl first, she's very nearly a beautiful catch taken over there at short fine leg. Priyanaz Chatterjee there sticking out her left hand and very nearly getting onto that. I think, those are the types of catches when you play at a bigger level that you would back yourself to take. But certainly for, that type of, was played quite well by Sophia Dunkley. And I think she will look at that and think that maybe she should have gotten a hand on that cleanly. And Sophia Dunkley has a life. Dunkley, of course, coming into this team not in the best of form, and she plays a single down there to short fine leg. It's actually been called a leg bye. So that brings Danny White-Hodge back on strike. But, very nearly a blinder. I think she did actually get her fingers on that, but once she hit the ground, it was hit with such speed as well. Last delivery of the over, and that is it high in the air, but does that go far enough? Well, it hits the rope, and that will be called a 6, I believe. So after a terrific first 5 deliveries, Catherine Bryce gets smacked for a 6, and of course they are waiting to adjudicate that, and that is in fact a 6. And just to be clear, when you hit a boundary shot and it directly hits the rope without touching the ground, that's a 6. So Sophia Dunkley, having been dropped earlier, goes on to take a single, and it was Danny White-Hodge who played that shot, obviously trying to get back into the form that she was in when she scored that brilliant century against Sri Lanka. Yes, and of course England have closed the 4th day on 182 for 5, and Gabby Fontanella is back into the attack, and her first delivery is played all the way down to third man. So you could say the area between third man and backward point, and that'll be just a single. But actually, that was Sophia Dunkley who played that shot, so she's certainly gotten back into form at the best possible time. I mean, not back in form yet, it's just one shot, but that will do her a world of good. And that is very well played. Carved right through point. No fielder's going to get that, and that's the boundary. So you could say she is playing herself back into form now, and that it'll only be a matter of time before, she starts really hitting those powerful shots. And she could very well have secured her place in the team for the West Indies clash, but when Nat Skipper-Brunt comes back into the side, there will be some questions asked about the makeup of the team. That's 2 fine shots and successive deliveries for Dunkley. Looks as though she's back into the groove. 3rd delivery. Very well bowled. It's the swing and the line. That's what you want to get. And that's another reason why you have to really give these, associate sides or non-professional sides a great deal of credit. I mean, you can't say non-professional, but they are associate teams. And they really work so hard on their game. It's wonderful. And as bowling units, Scotland and Ireland have showed that they are very good quality indeed. But this 4th delivery gets down on one knee, Dunkley, and plays that all the way down to the mid-wicket boundary for 4. And that's just another reminder that you've got to be really sharp in your line. Do not bowl short, and do not give the batswoman any room to hit that. And you can see there, Fontanella went short. Dunkley said, "Thank you very much indeed, darling. And I'll help myself to a nice mid-wicket boundary." Yeah, confirmation, of course, that Joe Root remains not out on 75 at the end of day 4, 25 runs away from what would be a decent century. He certainly still can bat well as captain. It's back with Fontanella now, and Dunkley is literally tucking into her at this moment. The delivery was going wide, but Dunkley chose instead to play the sweep, getting down and guiding that all the way to the deep backward square leg boundary for 4. So that's 13 runs off the over so far. Fontana there straying, going down leg, and Dunkley is now back in business. Don't know if you could say it's a slam dunk in that sense of the word, but whatever works. Last ball of the over. What a difference these last 2 overs have made. These last 6 or 7 balls have made, I should say. And she tips a single all the way down to the slip cordon to retain the strike. And after 4 overs, England have now managed to double their tally. 14 off the over. They were 14. But now they're 28 for 1. Going on comfortably at a run rate of 7. So once they get set, you would think that they would pretty much get a big total. I'm just going to be back. Just going to get something to eat. Well, I can tell you that Catherine Bryce has come back into the attack and bowling over the wicket. She's just been hit all the way to the backward square leg boundary for 4 by Sophia Dunkley, who is relishing being back in the team, and there's no protection there. So this could very well be another match-changing innings, and never underestimate the power of the second chance. Second delivery. Very well bowled, a slower ball, which meant that Dunkley couldn't quite get to it. Sophia Dunkley, definitely a very powerful hitter when she gets going. And that is a little bit wide to her offside, and she guides that down to the, you could say that's more the short third manish region. It's a single, and so Danny White-Hodge will be back on strike. And just so you know, if I do have some food during the coverage, I will be switching off my screen because it's not very professional to be eating on camera. See. 4th delivery of the over, White-Hodge on strike. And she goes down the track and lofts that right over the cover fielders. I think McColl will end up retrieving that. Do they run for 3? Yes, sirree. It's already 8 runs from the over. And that also just highlights the importance of making sure that you have a really aggressive batsman or batswoman who's, you know, finding his or her touch once again. 2 deliveries left. And that is sort of a cross-batted shot, but that is misfielded. Do they run for a single? Yes, they do. And I was, of course, waxing lyrical about their fielding and their catching earlier on. But again, you know, they have made a few misfields, and they have, of course, led to some runs being scored. I think the Sproul there just not really getting to that. Last delivery of the over. And once again, it's cross-batted. This time it is played to Pippa Sproul there, who is at mid-wicket. And so after 5 overs, 9 from this one, England are 37 for 1. And we're into the last over of the power play. And why the heck was that 7 overs? I do apologize for that. 5. We had played 4 overs prior to that. It's not easy as well when you have to work on the commentary and also change the banners, but I've done this long enough to know better, so I'm not going to make any excuses. Catherine Fraser into the attack. Opening batswoman and off-break bowler. Right arm over the wicket. And Dunkley sort of goes down a little bit, slight charge. I'm not too sure this will go all the way to the boundary. Actually, it does. Despite Chloe's best efforts, she was not able to stop that from finding the extra cover boundary. And so England are starting to motor along here. And Scotland have got some thinking to do. Second delivery of the over. And Dunkley guides that all the way down to deep mid-wicket. Should be just a single. Megan Nicole there tidying up. Third delivery there. Goes straight through to the wicketkeeper. A useful dot ball. Fourth delivery. White Hodge skips down and guides that to mid wicket for a single. And that is finally played by Sophia Dunkley, dancing down the track, splitting the cover and mid-off fielders, and that goes all the way to the long off boundary for 4. And so England are really motoring along. And speaking of motoring along, there is, of course, a game being played in the Men's World Cup, live from Houston in Texas. The Netherlands have taken a 2-0 lead inside the first 20 minutes. And Dunkley edges that, and that could go all the way to the third man boundary, and yes, it does. Some pretty ordinary fielding there. And so 14 runs off this over. 51 for 1 after 6, and that concludes, of course, a brilliant power play for England. A very important half-century partnership after the loss of Amy Jones' first ball. I think it's fair to say that after that first ball, things have not been very good for the Scots. And of course, I mentioned that the Netherlands took a 2-0 lead in the first 20 minutes of the game. Sunderland striker Brian Brobby with a double on 5 and 17 minutes, assisted by Cody Gakpo after 5 minutes and Denzel Dumfries after 17. So already Sweden are in a bit of trouble. And had a fine game against Tunisia, but these 2 goals will affect their goal difference, and they will now need to make sure they beat Japan in order to make sure that they have no issues going through. Technically, of course, a draw could be enough, but then there are 8 teams out of 12 that are scheduled to go through to the next stage. Scotland, of course, potentially could be one. But we already have a 50 partnership in this game, and as I've said, after that first ball, it just hasn't been working well for Scotland. Drop catch off from Sophia. Sophia Dunkley surviving a very difficult drop catch, it must be said. Priyanaz Chatterjee there, sticking her left hand out, and she could have caught that, but just fell out of her hand when she hit the ground. And it's proving to be costly. Daz, good afternoon to you, mate. And the answer is no. I think if they get a draw, bearing in mind that Ben Stokes is not in the team, that will be an amazing accomplishment. Joe Root, of course, is playing a low hand, but He's already lost his long-time partner, Harry Brook, his fellow Yorkie. And so once he goes out, gets out, if he gets out, heaven forbid, it'll be all over by the shouting. Dunkley has raced away to 43 off 25. And with the power play now over, and the field is allowed to be moved around wherever they would like to be moved around, Kersey Gordon, the former England left-arm spinner, is back into the attack. Left arm round the wicket to the right-handed Danny White-Hodge. And what a catch that is! The skipper there, Catherine Bryce, stretching to get that. And I'll tell you what, she did the business with the first ball of her first over, and she's done it with the first ball of her second over. Sort of an ugly cross-batted hoik there from Danny White-Hodge. And that breaks the partnership. Well, I was talking about the form of England's openers, but since then they have not been able to do themselves justice. Danny White-Hodge out for 7 off 11. 7-11. And after 6.1 overs, England are 51 for 2. Well, here's the thing. I mean, obviously Stokes got back into form with an innings of 95 for Durham today. And so you would think that he would find a way back into the team, especially given that England's middle order is very, very light on experience. So he finds a way back into the team. But to be brutally honest, I think I'd actually have Joe Root continuing as captain indefinitely because, you know, people are obviously going to say that maybe he didn't quite get the bowling changes right and New Zealand were able to take advantage of him. But I just think the England team needs a little bit more calmness right now. And Alice Capsey comes into the team needing another 39 runs to get to 1,000 T20 international runs. And she gets off the mark with a single all the way down to backward point. But, I mean, that catch, I mean, you know, she sort of, you know, just looked back and saw the ball coming from behind her. And she took that brilliantly. That has to be up there for one of the catches of the tournament, right up there with Catherine Fraser's brilliant catch to get rid of Kiana Joseph when Scotland played the West Indies. Third delivery of the over. That is played all the way to the cover fielder. That'll be a dot ball. And so this is the challenge for Dunkley. She's 7 runs away from what would be an absolutely brilliant half century. But if she loses wickets on either side, does she continue playing the way she's doing? And she answers that with a little hoik. Well, once again, it's another drop catch. All the way at deep mid-wicket. Catherine Fraser running in and just not able to get her hand on that. And we're going to see if she had some control over that. Played all the way down to deep mid-wicket. I don't think she got her hand near that, but it was very well fielded, to be fair. But, oh, it's another drop catch. Well, I'll tell you what, Sophia Dunkley is living a cat-like existence so far in this game. And you've got to say, Megan McCall, that was an absolute dolly. Kersey Gordon weaving her magic. The last ball of that over is played down to mid-wicket, and you could see in Catherine Fraser's throw back to the wicketkeeper that she was not very happy with the way things went. But I'll tell you what, at least thanks to the ex-England spinner, England have been pegged back a little bit. 7 overs bowled, England are 55 for 2, slightly less than 8 and over now. So maybe Scotland might feel as though there's a way back into this. Heather Knight, of course, will be coming in at number 5, the same as her jersey number, of course. And we are going to see the first signs of Hannah Rainey, who has come in to the team in place of Rachel Slater, age 29, quite fast, 25 wickets. So there's no left-arm seamer in Scotland's lineup, which I'm not too sure I can agree with that decision, to be honest, but we will see. Right arm over the wicket to the right-hander, Sophia Dunkley. And that is played straight to the mid-off fielder there. So we're going to see the drop catches. First of all, this one from Priyanaz Chatterjee. Wonderful effort, but just not able to get there. And Catherine Fraser running in from deep mid-wicket, not quite able to get that. But this one from Megan McCall, oh, she won't be happy with that. Kirsty Gordon has literally spun a web so far. Brilliant delivery there from Hannah Rainey. Sort of played into the block hole. England deciding to run for 2, and they just about get there in the end. Well, it's all happening out there at Headingley. Boy, do we have a cracker. Sarah Bryce receiving the ball, but I think she knew that Dunkley had come back in just in time. So Sophia Dunkley was dropped from the team, made her return. She's now 2 runs away from what would be a wonderful half century and an important one under the circumstances. With that single played down to mid-on, she moves to 49. And as for Atkinson, maybe he could come back in as well. Showing highlights, of course, of that phrase that managed to get rid of Kiana Joseph. Alice Capsey facing her second ball. And she gets another single. It could potentially be a double. Even better. It's a boundary. Priyanaz Chatterjee, I think her mind might still be frazzled a bit from that drop from Dunkley there. She was there at backward square leg. It was played quite well enough, but I don't think she was expecting anything more than maybe a single, but it goes right through Chatterjee there. I think she wasn't really able to smother that effectively, and that goes for 4. So 2 deliveries left. England still in a pretty comfortable position. That's an important dot ball there. Hannah Rainey bowling the right line. Goes straight through to the wicketkeeper. England's run rate still slightly under 8. And if they're able to avoid making any mistakes, they could have a big total. And Capsey plays that final ball all the way to deep, not deep mid-wicket, just mid-wicket there. That'll be a single. So Capsey will retain the strike, and after 8 overs, England are 63 for 2. And of course, later on today, Germany will be playing the Ivory Coast. That's at 9 p.m. UK time. Followed by Ecuador against Curacao at 1 a.m. in the UK. And Tunisia against Japan at 5 a.m. in the UK. Speaking of Chatterjee, she now comes into the attack. Right arm off spinner. And she's now got to try to redeem herself for that drop and also some pretty ordinary fielding. Over the wicket, Now, it's actually more medium pace, really, from Chatterjee, and that is tipped down to the cover fielder for a single, which brings Sophia Dunkley on strike. Chatterjee, of course, coming in for Kirsty Gordon, who's literally been Scotland's miracle worker, taking the only 2 wickets to fall so far. Seven fours and a 6. Strike rate of above 150. A fine return to form and a very important innings. Chatterjee aborts her run-up. Dead ball. Now she bowls a second delivery. And that is carved all the way down to the deep extra cover fielder. And that is Sophia Dunkley's 50. A wonderful, wonderful return to form. And at the right time too. So she's certainly given England a selection headache, especially for when Nat Skipper-Brunt comes back into the side. Third delivery, Alice Capsey on strike. And that is guided all the way down to the third man boundary, and that will be 4 runs. Nicely played indeed. Chatterjee not exactly express pace, and you can see there was some width on offer there. Excellently played cut shot, and that's 4 runs to Alice Capsey. 3 deliveries to go, 3 already bowled. Capsey plays that all the way down to, oh, and that's another misfield, and that once again goes all the way to the boundary. So, well, I think their catching has been absolutely spot on, but when it comes to some of their ground fielding, I think Darcy Carter there, the other opening batswoman, yeah, that's pretty inexcusable, it has to be said. Capsey goes to 15, facing another delivery. This one's played a little bit more power, but that finds Catherine Fraser deep mid wicket. That's a single, which makes it 11 off the over so far. Last delivery of the over. And Sophia Dunkley plays that all the way down to long on, and at least Carter doesn't concede a boundary, but there will be 2. So Dunkley moves on to 52. 13 runs off the over, and after 9, England is 76 for 2. Comfortably takes them to above 8 and over. And so this is just another reminder more than anything else about the importance of making sure you get your fielding spot on and just, keep your focus more than anything else. Fielding is really more about focus, not just about, flying around on the field. You've got to make sure that you are focused on where the ball is going more than anything else. Catherine Fraser back into the attack to bowl this last over before the mid-innings break. Gordon has been outstanding, but the other bowlers have been just a little bit on the expensive side. Right arm off spin over the wicket, and Alice Capsey guides that down to, I wouldn't say guides, it sort of plays that down to deep mid wicket. Fortunately for Scotland, it's not an overthrow, but Dunkley with a slam dunk of an inning so far. 52 off 34. She's well on her way. Gets down on one leg there and plays that all the way to backward square leg. But once again, that'll only be a single. So it is a welcome return to form indeed. Some wonderful shots on either side of the wicket. The sweep has been used to very good effect, especially down at backward square. And speaking of sweep, Alice Capsey sweeps that all the way to the cow corner boundary, you could say, between mid-wicket and long on, as it were. And you can see now that the batswomen are starting to exploit the gaps, exploit the length of the bowling, and just cart the bowlers all around. And that goes past the point fielder, and that'll be another boundary. So Alice Capsey getting into the groove. 25 off 11 so far. She's certainly improved her strike rate against spin bowling, taking it up 11 points from 121 to 132. 2 deliveries to go, and Catherine Fraser's over. She goes round the wicket now, hoping to try and contain the score. And Capsey once again plays that down to long on / mid on, as it were. And she's definitely scoring down the ground a lot more often. So compared to last year, she's definitely made some strides. Heather Knight hasn't really done that much batting in this tournament. And with Dunkley and Capsey in this sort of form, she might not need to. Excellent cut all the way to the point boundary. 15 runs off the over takes England to 91 for 2 off 10. And they are motoring. That is midpoint. After the first 10 overs there, 91 for 2 at the rate of 9.1 and over. And so when your captain makes a decision to bowl first, you really, really have to get your fielding spot on. They did that quite brilliantly against the West Indies, but I think the England batswomen have been perhaps a little bit more, you could say, dynamic with their stroke play. And of course, it's reflected in the strike rates of Dunkley and Capsey. Dunkley motoring along at 150. Capsey a shade over 200. So Catherine Bryce comes back into the attack. She's been taken for 17 off her 2 overs so far. Right arm over the wicket to the right-handed Alice Capsey. And that's popped in the air. But that will fall well short of the long-off fielder. And England run for a single. The third wicket partnership of 41 off 24 so far. And that is swept high into the air. Is there a fielder under it? And out goes Sophia Dunkley. Pretty sure she would have seen the fielder there at deep backward square leg for a reason. Hoping to play the sweep, playing that a bit high. And after all those drop catches, finally, one lands. It doesn't fly over the cuckoo's nest, as it were. If you know, you know. Brilliantly played by Sophia Dunkley. Still maintains a strike rate of 150. But England are now 91 for 3, and Scotland are trying to find their way back into this. And the former captain, Heather Knight, now walks out. I mentioned that she hasn't done that much batting in this tournament. Now she might get an opportunity to do some consolidation. Heather Knight will be facing this ball from Catherine Bryce. Tips it all the way to cover. That'll be a single. Gets off the mark. To Catherine Fraser there. Safe hands. Running all the way from mid-wicket to take that. She did superbly. Beg your pardon, it was actually Hannah Rainey who took that catch. Catherine Fraser, of course, has just now fielded it mid-on. That's just a single. So 3 singles and a wicket in between. Heather Knight continuing to keep the scoreboard ticking. Excellent throw, but I think the former captain is safe. She made a quick decision to take that single. And the throw actually was, well, it didn't hit the wicket, but it's thereabouts. Last ball, Capsey plays that all the way down to backward square leg. 5 runs off the over. And after 11 overs, England are 96-3. England, of course, have won 33 of their 44 matches. Win percentage of 75. Their best performance, of course, was when they were champions back in 2009, when the England captain was none other than current coach, Charlotte Edwards. And so Hannah Rainey, who was the person who took that catch to dismiss Sophia Dunkley, comes back into the attack. Bit short there. Played very well, and too well, in fact. That goes right through Gabriella Fontaine at square leg for yet another boundary. And, of course, that brings up the 100 in the 12th over. Pitching short there, so that's not really the best of strategies, because pitching short when you're not necessarily very fast it sort of sits up for the batsman more than anything else. Every 100 runs, DP World makes deliveries all around the world. Second delivery. That is much better. You want to bowl a bit fuller, maintain your line, and that's when you get the swing. You've always got to pitch it up if you want to get some swing. Third delivery. And that is very well guided past the point fielder, but also very well fielded there. Hannah Sproul doing a fine job at deep backward point. Fourth delivery of the over. And that looks a little bit wide. Capsey doesn't quite get the connection she wanted. And that goes all the way down to deep cover for a single. Any updates from the football? And boy, the Netherlands are running amok. It's Cody Gakpo's turn to get on the score sheet. making it 4-0 with goals on 47 and 54 minutes. Anthony Elanga pulling one back, but this particular loss will absolutely damage Sweden's impressive goal difference. And in between, England played another single. And so the last delivery of the over from Hannah Rainey. And once again, it's short. It sits up for the batswoman. Capsey plays that all the way down to deep mid-wicket. Should get 2. Yes, please and thank you. 10 runs off the over. 106 for 3 off 12. So they're still going at just slightly under 9 and over. At this particular rate, they should be able to get above 180. I don't see them getting 200 unless Scotland completely disintegrate as far as their batting is concerned. But once again, another assist from Dumfries for Gakpo's first goal. Crescencio Somerville assisting for the second. Anthony Elanga pulling one back. But the match has long since been over as a contest, it has to be said. And of course, yesterday we saw Brazil beating Haiti 3-0, eliminating the Haitians from the tournament. Scotland lost 1-0 to Morocco, so the Scots have had a bit of a setback. They could still make the next stage, but they will want a really good result against Brazil. Kirsty Gordon now back into the attack. Left arm round the wicket, and that is a fine delivery to the right-handed batswoman, Heather Knight. She's just come in, the former captain, so she will be a little bit circumspect, especially against her ex-teammates. And Knight comes down and plays that all the way to mid-wicket, thinking of a single, but the Scotland fielders say no, not this time. So Heather Knight, I think it's fair to say that her days of being an exceptionally aggressive batswoman are now more or less over, so to speak. Probably will be more expected to play an anchor role while Capsey capitalises. She almost capitalises there, playing that down to deep backward square leg. Sadly, it's only for a single. Elsewhere, Turkey beat Paraguay. And we see Alice Capsey there trying to attempt a reverse sweep, but it's no avail. And Scotland's sloppiness in the field is being highlighted. You know, boundaries being leaked there. 16 runs in total. Heather Knight coming down the track, plays that all the way to deep mid-wicket. Catherine Fraser happy to play that back. And it was actually Heather Knight who had that attempt for a reverse sweep. Just never really got to grips with that. Completely missed it. So there are some huge gaps on the leg side that both these batswomen can exploit. And certainly a lot of spaces in the middle area of the field. 4 singles from the over. So that decreases the run rate to just above 8.5, you could say. Below 8.5, I would say. See Catherine Fraser and Priyanaz Chatterjee being quite expensive. Dunkley basically taking a huge toll off of them. Hannah Rainey now back into the attack. And Catherine Bryce's bowling changes are going to be very key here. And excellent delivery first up. Alice Capsey playing and missing. Capsey is now on 40 off 23. Of course, action from earlier today. The Aussies did put up a score of 200, and the Netherlands, credit to them, only lost 3 wickets, but they were never going to overhaul that total. Second delivery of the over from Hannah Rainey, and all Capsey can do is sort of play that down to extra cover. And of course, the Group A table, we see that Australia and India are sitting pretty at the top with excellent run rates. Bangladesh, by virtue of their fine win over Pakistan today, are up to 4 points. South Africa are 2 behind them. And we have a wicket. Well, you've got to give credit once again to the Scotland bowlers. They found a way to come back in and maintain some pressure. And it's the set batswoman, Alice Capsey, who is out. And so a lot's going to depend on how Heather Knight plays, because now she is the most experienced batswoman left. Capsey not picking the line. And it's raining down wickets for Rainey and Scotland. Strike rate of 160, 4 sixes for Alice Capsey. Should have gone on to make a half century, but sadly she leaves England in a slight spot above her at 110 for 4. And they are maintaining a good run rate, comfortably above 8. Just need to make sure that they don't end up losing wickets. Because if they run out of wickets, they certainly won't be able to post the total that they would like to post on this pitch. And Charlie Dean did say that it was a fine cricket pitch. And certainly when England bowl, they're going to look to try and put England in all sorts of trouble. I mean, what I meant was that England are going to look to put Scotland in all sorts of trouble. Some more advertisements, of course, and this is another reason why, Scotland have really shown themselves to be a very efficient and exciting bowling outfit. Their fielding has left a lot to be desired, it has to be said, although their catching for the most part has been good. A few drops from Alice Capsey off her batting could potentially have cost Scotland in a big way, but thankfully they dismissed her not too long after she got her half century. Freya Kemp, left arm seamer, is in at number 6. Left-handed. And she will be facing Hannah Rainey, who still bowls over the wicket to the left-hander, and she plays that all the way down to backward square leg for a boundary. And this is a recap of Alice Capsey's wicket. Hoping to play the forward defensive shot, but not really getting to the line of the delivery. I think she was probably expecting that to swing, but it just didn't swing at all. It went straight. 2 deliveries to go. And well, certainly Heather Knight coming down the track saved her from having an LBW shout against her. But England are now on Nelson. Nelson is, of course, a problematic number. See former English first-class cricketer Charlie Dagnall in the commentary box. Last delivery. And Heather Knight plays that all the way down to the backward square leg boundary, and that goes through once again for 4, despite Tom Tendler's despairing dive. So, England are now 115 for 4. Some excellent work from Scotland for the first 5 deliveries, but once again, they end up conceding some more runs from pretty ordinary fielding. Still maintaining a comfortable run rate of above 8 and over. And as I said, with the dangerous Dunkley and Capsey now gone, Heather Knight will have a role to play because we're getting into the all-rounder territory, of course, with Freya Kemp coming in. And then, of course, Charlie Dean and the bowlers come in not too long afterwards. Catherine Fraser now. Does she go round the wicket to the left-hander or over the wicket? Looks like she's going round the wicket to the left-handed Freya Kemp. Freya can certainly hold a bat, but she plays that brilliantly all the way down to the long-on boundary for 4. I think Catherine Fraser was hoping that she would contain the run scoring, but a bit short, really. And Kemp got into position. And that's actually more of a shot going all the way down to mid-wicket, the deep mid-wicket boundary there. Very nicely played. Just another reminder, of course, if you would like to vote for today's player of the match, you can go to t20worldcup.com/POTM. Fraser again round the wicket. And this time Kemp cuts that all the way down to, you can say that's more of a deep extra cover position there for a single this time, and that takes England to 120 for 4. Fraser continues round the wicket, this time to the right-hander Heather Knight. Not the best decision. Sweeps that perfectly past the short fine leg fielder with no protection there. That will go to the boundary. So Heather Knight starting to get back into the groove. Yeah, you never ever want to bowl around the wicket as an off-spinner to a right-handed batsman. You bowl short, you're asking to be swept. That's exactly what Heather Knight did. Got down on one knee, the rest is history. And this time around, she sort of plays that down to the mid-on fielder there. Darcy Carter tidying up. But already that's 10 runs from the over from the first 4 balls. England are at 85 for 2. So not 8, but 8.52 is their run rate. They are at 125 for 4. 2 deliveries to go. And of course, the score will be updated at the end of every over and after a wicket falls. Round the wicket again. And that is a fine delivery, but very well played by Freya Kemp. Just past the extra cover fielder. That goes all the way to mid-on. The projected score at the current rate at which they're going, they could get 170. 178 would be a really good total if they could get 10 runs and over. Last delivery. She goes back over the wicket, but once again, it's this time Heather Rainey is the culprit. You've got to do a lot more to stop the balls coming at you from going to the boundary. That's just poor cricket in any way, shape or form. And that takes England to 130 for 4 with 15 runs coming off that over. And after 15 overs, England are in a position of strength. And Scotland will definitely look back on those instances of sloppy fielding and say, you know what? They gifted England those runs. Certainly had a knack of being able to break partnerships and prevent set batswomen from going even further. I'm sure Dunkley would have loved the century. Capsey was 10 runs away from a 50. But with Heather Knight still there, she's on 18 from 12. Not doing too badly. And Hannah Rainey, of course, has to try to redeem herself for that horrible piece of fielding. Back into the attack, her first delivery goes through to the wicketkeeper, sort of going across the left-handed batswoman, bowling over the wicket. Second delivery of the over. And that is nicely played all the way down to deep extra cover. That will be just a single. So England's priority will probably be to keep the scoreboard ticking, avoid losing wickets, and just keep Scotland at arm's length. It's really all they need to do from here as we go into the last 5 overs of England's innings. Fifth wicket partnership, 21 off 11. And at times you have to say they've been gifted some of their runs. Third delivery of the over. I'm not too sure why the Scotland fielders are appealing. No chance of an LBW. And that delivery was a good delivery. It tied Heather Knight up in a way. And this is, in fact, Hannah Rainey's final over. Not Heather, Hannah. And the ex-captain hoping to try to guide that over the wicketkeeper, but completely missing it. It has, though, been called a wide. And this lady will be very happy with her welcome return to form. Fine inning of 57 off 37. You think it could have been more. Heather Knight sort of defends at that. And so Hannah Rainey hasn't exactly done too badly with the ball. Probably conceded a few more runs than she would like, but she can certainly be very happy the way she's bowled. And that is a fine shot from Heather Knight, getting down on one leg. You could say sort of hoiking / sweeping that all the way to the fine leg boundary. Excellent shot there. Getting down on her right leg and playing that shot. Last delivery of the over. And Knight gets a single, which means she retains the strike. Do they opt to go for an overthrow? No, they don't. So 7 runs from the over. With 4 overs to go, England are 137 for 4. They're certainly not going to get a 200 score like Australia did today, or like they did against Sri Lanka. But it should be more than imposing enough for Scotland. After Freya Kemp, in fact, comes Danny Gibson, another all-rounder, and then the bowlers. Captain Dean, Sophie Eccleston, Lindsay Smith, and Lauren Bell. Here now Chatterjee back into the attack, right arm medium-ish. She'll want to put her figures right after going for 13 in her first over. Right arm over the wicket. And Heather Knight unable to get that away. Only succeeding in finding the point fielder. Second delivery of the over. And that is nicely played by Heather Knight, but there is, of course, fielding cover down at deep extra cover. That'll just be a single. Third delivery. Chatterjee. And she takes a wicket. England actually ran two there, with Heather Knight coming back for the second. But when she was needed to stick around and play a big hand, she holds out, finding the short fine leg fielder. No mistake with the catch. Priyanaz Chatterjee is as happy can be. Heather Knight goes for 25 off 19. England 137 for 5 after 16.3 overs. Certainly can't look beyond what should be an England win, but if that's only because Scotland's batting just doesn't quite have the experience and the composure you would like. See close-up shots of the DJ there in the stands playing some interesting music. And as mentioned, Danny Gibson comes in to face the final three balls of Priyanaz Chatterjee's over. And the first one, she will get off the mark, courtesy of a misfield there. Chloe not able to field that effectively, but I think Rachel Bryce knew that Heather Knight was finding a great deal of joy around the fine leg region. So she brought the fielder in. Reap the benefits. But England have moved to 140 for 5. Two deliveries to go. I think the field is now being spread out. You literally see quite a few fielders, hugging the boundary. 2 balls left of the over. And Kemp plays that very well down to mid-on, but just for a single. Last ball of the over. And Danny Gibson plays that down to mid-off. I'm not too sure she will want to take a single from there. No, she doesn't. So England end the over at 141 for 5. 3 overs to go. Seeing some shots before play of the Scotland players in a huddle. Not that they would necessarily need any extra motivation to do well against England. Skipper Catherine Bryce now back into the attack to bowl her final over. 3 for 22. 3 overs for 22, I must say, with 1 wicket. That of Miss Dunkley. Rise to bowl over the wicket to the left-handed Freya Kemp. Tossed up a little bit, and Kemp is able to guide that all the way down to the point boundary. And for once, it's well fielded enough to not cost a boundary, but they do run for 2. Megan McColl there just providing the formalities. Just another reminder, England are 141 for 5 after 17. Last 3 overs of the game. And Kemp goes big. And that is big. A huge shot from a huge lady down to mid-on. I mean, I can't say huge. She is certainly very tall, but she does wield a big bat. I think we're seeing there one of the Scotland players having cast on the foot. That might very well be Ailsa Lister there, who was dropped for today's game. Hoping to repeat the same trick in that area, but not getting the elevation. Just short of long on in the end, and that single brings up England's 150. Classic tall left-handed batswoman's shot. 150 for 5. Some shots there of Freya Kemp's hitting. Certainly likes to use the long handle a great deal, and a very powerful hitter as well. Not necessarily the best in terms of control and innovation, but when she hits them, they stay hit. Bryce once again hoping to get the slower ball, but not really succeeding, and Kemp has no problems powering that through to the deep mid-wicket boundary for another 4. Fast delivery. And she gets down and plays that magnificently, and that's another fine shot for 6. All the way down to deep in wicket. So Catherine Bryce once again having her figure spoiled by a late innings onslaught. And with 2 overs to go, England have moved to 161 for 5. 20 runs off that final over from Catherine Bryce. I'll tell you what, this lady Kemp, certainly a fine hitter. 20 runs off that over for sure. 2 big sixes, a big part of it. So the run rate is now just under 9 and over, which would suit England to no end. I really can't see Scotland having the depth in batting to be able to, overhaul that. And so Kirsty Gordon, the former England spinner, coming back to bowl her final over. Magnificent figures of 2 for 9 from her 3, taking wickets off the first ball of her first 2 overs, but this first ball is nicely cut by Danielle Gibson all the way down to the point boundary for 4. So Kirsty's going to have to be a little bit careful. Gibson there basically rocking back onto her back foot, sort of jumping back, you could say. Cutting that quite splendidly. Last 7 balls have yielded 24 runs. And this 8th ball very nearly results in a boundary. Well, I think Catherine Bryce there sort of backed up her fielder, but Darcy Carter thought she probably failed again. We're going to find out what the verdict is here. Once again, Carter pushing that. I think that might have touched the boundary rope before Bryce intervened. And it is, in fact, signalled a 4. So Kirsty Gordon now suffering in her final over. And she goes over the wicket to Danny Gibson, who goes down the track. And she gives that a lot of height and elevation, and that goes for 6. So England are turning on the heat. They want another 200 score. The way they're bowling now, you will not bet against them getting it. Gordon once again over the wicket. And certainly not going to get her out LBW bowling like that, but she does limit it to a single. Danny Gibson playing it all the way down to mid-wicket. Sixth wicket partnership of 37 off 13. Strike rate of very close to 300. That is exactly what England would have wanted. Total of 86 metres. Big shot. And Kemp once again. That goes for 4. All the way down to deep mid-wicket. She moves to 32 off 13. This is some wonderful late over hitting. That reminds me almost of Marcus Trescothick, who used to enjoy playing that shot down the leg side. Tresco is, of course, the batting coach of the men's team, and that is played all the way down to the same deep mid-wicket area that is very well fielded. They do come back for a second, though, and with 1 over to go, England have now romped to 182 for 5, 21 runs off that over. Some very, very fine hitting indeed. So the challenge is can Scotland limit them to 190 or thereabouts? See there, those 2 big skyscrapers in those last 2 overs have really pushed England close to a fine total. Priyanaz Chatterjee, right arm medium. Well, it's a wide-ish delivery, but Gibson is able to slap that all the way down to the deep extra cover boundary for 4. And that takes England to 186 for 5. 16 runs off 5 balls, and they get their 200. I think Scotland are really going to have to improve their death bowling. Been carted around the track by Gibson and Kemp. 5 deliveries left. What does Priyanaz Chatterjee have up her sleeve? Played all the way down to mid/long on. That'll be just a single, but that brings Freya Kemp on strike. 34 off 14. We want to talk about her strength against pace bowling. She plays the pull shot wonderfully well and strikes it at 250 odd in ODIs. Priyanaz Chatterjee is not Punjabi, as I said in an earlier stream. She is actually of Bengali blood. Her father, of course, was a famous Bengali economist. She was born in Dundee to him and his wife. Kemp once again plays that very well, seeing the gap over there at backward square leg, and that goes all the way to the boundary for 4. So 3 balls left, 9 runs for England to get to the 200 mark. You think they should be able to manage it. The mascots are out there having a good time as well. You like to see that. You do like to see that. Chatterjee once again over the wicket. And that's sort of the line you want to bowl to the left-hander, not give her room to sort of play that. And so the last 15 balls have yielded exactly 50 runs with 6 fours and 3 big 6s. .53 partnership there from 18 balls. Strike rate of nearly 300. Magnificent stuff. And Danny Gibson with the second to last delivery finds the deep extra cover boundary, which takes England to 196 for 5. 1 ball to go. You could say that's more just deep cover rather than deep extra cover. Last ball of the over. Scotland will not want to concede 200 or more. And that is played all the way down to the mid-wicket boundary, and they do get the 200. So 18 runs off that over takes England to exactly 200 for 5. A wonderful display of late order hitting from the England ladies, which means that Scotland have the unenviable task of having to score 200 runs from 20 overs at the rate of 10.05 an over. Not 1.05. 10.05. Whoops. Exactly 10 and over from the England ladies. They literally went to town in those last few overs there. I think it's fair to say that Scotland sort of wilted a little bit, and Gibson and Kemp provided the impetus they needed. Impetus doesn't even do it justice, really. Fantastic stuff. Not if you're a Scotland fan, of course. I think the early promise from that first ball wicket there from Kirsty Gordon was wiped away, and in the end, in her final over, she was also taken to the cleaners. The sloppy fielding from Scotland has not really helped. Certainly didn't help. We will, of course, come to that, but here's the scorecard. Jones and Wyatt Hodge failing quite badly at the top of the order. Sophia Dunkley coming back in and having the time of her life. Alice Capson providing brilliant support. Heather Knight, a slightly disappointing 25 off 19, given how well the pitch played. And then, of course, you had Freya Kemp and Danny Gibson in that order, coming in and just, laying waste to some tired Scotland bowling and some pretty awful England fielding. And we are going to speak to one of the England players right now. Okay, so that was Alice Capsey, who was, of course, the second highest top scorer in 40 off 25. Freya Kemp, of course, coming in later and smacking 39, very close to overhauling that, of 16 balls, I should say. And then Danny Gibson, 30 off 11, close to 300 for her. Seriously, it was the late order batting which really did it for England, you've got to say. And just took their toll on the England bowl, on the Scotland bowlers, it has to be said. And a nice little feature there on Kirsty Gordon, who, of course, was born in Scotland and moved down to England to try to make a career for herself. Actually, she was born in, she was, of course, born in Huntly in Aberdeenshire, but nice little feature. She was, of course, playing international cricket for Scotland, but she had the opportunity to take up a deal to play for the Loughborough Lightning as a domestic player in the Kia Super League and declare for England for doing so. She was, of course, named in the England squad later that year in 2018, and she got into the squad after leading the KSL wicket charts with 17 and 11 games. But when England lost to Australia in the final, Ash Gardner took it to the cleaners. And despite being backed ahead of Alex Hartley for that tournament, she slipped down the pecking order behind the likes of Lindsay Smith, Maddie Villiers, Sarah Glenn, and of course Sophie Eccleston. She won a Test cap in 2019, but never really made it off the bench afterwards. So, of course, her experience prompted the ECB to change their regulations, allowing Scottish players to appear as non-overseas players while continuing to play internationally for Scotland. But as a centrally contracted England player, it was too late for her to benefit from that. So she renounced her England connections, returned to play for Scotland, and the rest is history. Right. Now, I'm just going to be away from the keyboard for a little bit, but I will be back soon. But as always, thank you very much indeed for joining in. I will be back. Of course, I am back. We are still in the mid-innings break. So trying to get a few things done. And a huge update, of course. Crescencio Somerville has actually scored a 5th goal for the Netherlands in the 89th minute, and it has finished in Houston 5-1 to the Netherlands against Sweden. So Sweden, after beating Tunisia 5-1, have lost by the same margin. So now they are in the same position as Scotland are, with 1 win and 1 loss from their first 2 games, but have scored 6 more goals, despite having the same goal difference of 0. So Sweden, under Graham Potter, are going to have to make sure they beat Japan and beat them comfortably in order to go through. Because Japan, of course, drew against the Dutch. If Japan managed to beat what must be said is a sort of demoralized Tunisian team, you have to say that they will be favourites to go through unless Sweden pull off a huge win. So there will be a huge post-mortem in the Sweden camp as to how they could have lost that, especially with so many experienced defenders, including captain Victor Lindelof, the Europa League winner with Aston Villa, after failing twice to win that same trophy with Manchester United. Another reminder as well that the England men's cricket team are facing a bit of an uphill battle against New Zealand. Joe Root is still not out on 75, but they need another 280-odd runs to pull off an unlikely win. Well, they need to avoid losing 5 wickets to pull off a creditable draw. Of course, we are now around about that time when it's time for the Scotland batswoman to come out and play. Very clear, beautiful sky over in Leeds. You see Kemp and Gibson there combining for 27 balls and scoring 79 runs at just under 300 strike rate. That is brilliant. 61 off 21, that final unbroken partnership, which really, took their toll on the Scotland bowlers. And you can see they're coming in. Left-handed Kemp using the long handle and definitely hitting with a great deal of power. Danny Gibson as well, using some good footwork, either hopping back or going down the track into the pitch of the ball. And then the final delivery, of course, was hit for 4 down to mid-wicket from Priyanaz Chatterjee. And aside from Gordon and Hannah Rainey, you've got to say that the other bowlers were a bit too expensive. So it's around about that time for the Scotland innings to get underway. Darcy Carter and Catherine Fraser. Well, Carter needs another 55 runs to get to 1,000 T20 international runs. Both of them, of course, right-handed batswomen. Another recap that England scored exactly 200 for 5. So Scotland need 200 runs from 20 overs at 10.05 and 0. You see there Lauren Bell and Sophie Eccleston deep in discussion. England's batting has been pretty good so far, that for the most part the bowlers have not been needed to come in and wield the willow. It also has to be said that they haven't exactly played tough opposition as of yet. Opened against Sri Lanka, where they were absolutely dominant, then beat Ireland, and are now in position to beat Scotland today. As we see Lauren Bell getting ready to begin proceedings. Right arm over the wicket with that little hoppy run that she has. That is very nicely guided all the way down to the deep backward point boundary, but that'll just be a single. So better start for Scotland than England, who lost a wicket off the first ball. It just goes to show that well begun is not always half done. Second delivery. Almost drifting down the leg, but Catherine Fraser there only succeeding in playing that to Sophia Dunkley at mid-on. That is very nicely played, but just not really having the power to get back beyond the mid-off field. And we see the player having an ice pack on her leg. Scotland. I think she might possibly have to wait for her turn to bat. Lauren Bell trying to get the outswinger moving. Doing pretty well so far. That's 3 dot balls out of 4. So this is going to be, should be an easy enough test for Charlie Dean, really. I think the game against West Indies will probably be an even bigger test for England's credentials. Two deliveries to go. And Fraser is able to loft that over the infield. And that is badly dropped by Danny Gibson at mid-off. I don't know if that's going to run. And that, to add insult to injury, that runs to the boundary. Well, she was sort of running back to take that catch, you could say. And for a minute, we thought that she had her hands underneath that. Catherine Fraser there waking that, really. And oh, that has to go down to the dolly, really. Last ball of the over. Catherine Fraser still there, and this time it's a more convincing shot, and with no protection over there, it ends up being better. Smacks that for a 6. So 11 runs off that first over. I know I've just said that well begun is not always half done, but you couldn't ask for a better beginning than that, really. Scotland, of course, were 0 for 0 at the beginning of the game. At the end of this first over, they are 11 for 0. With 19 overs remaining, and they need 190 more runs. So 19 more overs of exactly that. They can't. Can they? Lindsay Smith now opening the bowling. Left arm round the wicket, and immediately she has Darcy Carter in a bit of trouble, but we are taking a look at this drop catch, and that is literally the worst outcome. It drops out of your hand as you are running there at mid-off, and then it goes straight to the boundary. And this is a fine shot there from Darcy Carter, playing it back beyond the bowler. A more lofted sort of shot, you could say, but with the fielder in the circle, there was no way that she was going to, get close to that. Not even someone as tall as Sophie Eccleston, mind you. 5'11". Third delivery of Lindsay Smith's over. And so Scotland are going to have to be careful that they don't have too many rushes of blood, but that is a fine shot there from Darcy Carter. And with no protection around the point and cover boundary, that's another boundary. Well, you know what? We've seen Scotland make brilliant starts, get pegged back, and then struggle to very nearly get it over the line. I wonder if this match will pan out the same way, but already Charlie Dean under pressure as captain. She's seen her bowlers get taken apart for 19 runs off 9 balls so far. And thanks to a pretty poor misfield there from Heather Knight, it's now 20 off 10. So the consequence is that Scotland's current run rate is actually better at the moment than their required run rate. Last ball of Lindsay Smith's over. And Catherine Fraser goes down the track. And has that got all the way? Yes, it has. Two boundaries and a 6. 15 runs off that over. And Scotland are literally they're batting like a hurricane. Here they are, bum bum, batting like a hurricane. Any fans of the famous German rock band Scorpions will know exactly what I'm talking about. Lauren Bell back into the attack. Went for 11 from her first over and, of course, had that drop catch by Danny Gibson. That's a better delivery there, maintaining that line, not giving Darcy Carter room to play, and all she can do is sort of fend that, really. But, of course, this is the power play, the first 6 overs. No more than 2 fielders allowed outside the 25-yard circle. So Scotland are definitely going to look to want to take advantage of these regulations. Certainly trying to play over the fielders, observing where the field is, and that is a wonderful away swing from Lauren Bell. Third delivery of the over. Still right arm over the wicket. And that is played back down the ground, but Sophia Dunkley at mid-on there is able to tidy that up. Scotland moved to 27 from 2.3 overs. And Catherine Bryce, if she comes out to bat and gets a boundary, that'll be her 200th boundary in T20 internationals. You hit with Sophie Eccleston. A short ball there from Lauren Bell. Slower short ball, which Catherine Fraser plays at and misses. And as I was saying, when Sophie Eccleston comes on to bowl, she only needs one wicket to get to 150 in T20 internationals. 2 deliveries to go. Once again, that hoppy, skippy run-up from Lauren Bell. And no protection there on the leg side, but that is very well fielded there by Lindsay Smith at deep square leg. 2 runs from the over, so England have recovered well. They've sort of pulled Scotland back a little bit. But again, Scotland will want to try and keep this partnership going. Certainly did brilliantly against the West Indies before the middle order had just, they just imploded in the face of that West Indian spin onslaught from Hayley Matthews and Alfie Fletcher. Last ball of the over. Very well hit. Back down the ground. And that's 4. 2 singles at a boundary. And that takes Scotland to 32 for naught of 3 overs. Already got some comments in. Yes, Hanno. Hello to you, Burt. And yes, they are keeping up with the run rate, but the biggest problem here is we saw when Scotland played against the West Indies, they lost quite a bit of composure, especially after losing their openers. The middle order just, imploded. They did keep it close enough, but it was just too little too late. But I'll tell you what, I wouldn't be surprised if Scotland actually, spring a surprise against New Zealand. As we see the England captain, Charlie Dean, coming into the attack. Right arm over the wicket. And the first ball is swept there. Is there a fielder there? Well, it was at mid-wicket. It bounced in front of Danny Gibson. But using her right hand, she sort of slapped that ball back into the infield. Nicely done indeed. And she saved 2 runs there. And Fraser once again trying to back away and play down the leg, and she is able to play that beyond the short fine leg fielder all the way down to fine leg for another boundary. So it is, of course, playing well, the pitch. You just think, though, with the Scotland batting lineup that if and when they lose a wicket, they'll start losing them in clumps. Just don't quite have the experience really needed to make sure they weather that storm. Got ball there from Charlie Dean to slightly delay proceedings a bit. Dean certainly got a lot on her plate, captaining the side today. But the captain strikes. Catherine Fraser trying to go for 1 sweep too many, only succeeding in getting bowled. And so a breezy partnership of 38 is brought to a close. You can see that was very nicely bowled. Certainly didn't give her any room. Went for the sweep shot, ended up losing her off stump. 23 off 13, 177 strike rate. 2 4s and 2 6s for Catherine Fraser, but her departure now brings the Scotland captain, Catherine Bryce, to the crease. And she ended up going for a duck against the West Indies. She'll definitely want to put that right against England. Fifth delivery. Charlie Dean bowling to her counterpart, Her counterpart, Catherine Bryce, gets off the mark down to mid-on. Last delivery of the over. And that's a dot ball played to cover. So, 4 overs gone. Scotland are 39 for 1. So the run rate has slightly gone below 10 and over. But the most important thing now for Scotland, as far as they're concerned, is that they have to keep their wickets intact. Lindsay Smith back into the attack. Of course, that was Darcy Carter who played the last ball of the previous over. So Bryce is still on strike, and she plays that second ball all the way down to what looks like mid-wicket, deep mid-wicket, you could say. And they end up running 2. A little hesitation there in the field, and Scotland get the extra run. Charlie Dagnall there on the television screen pointing to the group of Scotland fans in the stands. Catherine Bryce hoping to play the sweep on that third delivery, but completely missing it. No danger of her being out LBW, but she will need to be careful. The last thing that she and Scotland would want is for the skipper to get out. She is playing quite circumspectively. I think losing Catherine Fraser is a bit of a disappointment because she was definitely looking very fluent. So Darcy Carter, who of course started with that wonderful knock against the West Indies, very nearly seeing her team through, disconsolate near the end, she will have a role to play. She's now on strike to face the final 2 balls. She plays a beautiful shot there, splitting the field between extra cover and mid-off, and that goes to the boundary. I think Scotland might like another of those, to be honest. Carter there, continuing where she left off against the West Indies. Playing that beautifully. And that should be a single down to mid/long on to ensure that Darcy Carter keeps the strike. 8 runs off the over, and Scotland are 47 for 1. Nine runs, I should say. No, it is 8. Charlie Dean continuing. Right arm over the wicket, and Carter eventually running a single. Some more hesitation there in the field as far as England are concerned, and that's not really what you'd like to see from them. Fine tournament so far for Carter, that 59 from 62 against the West Indies. Almost more or less a runnable 14 against Ireland. And Catherine Bryce not quite able to find the gaps, only succeeding in finding the fielders, but the scoreboard is ticking. Scotland are now 49 for 1, hoping to get to their 50 in quick time. You wouldn't bet against them. Fine delivery from Charlie Dean. Forcing the batswoman back. Playing a back foot defensive shot. Carter whips that down to deep mid-wicket. That'll be another single, and that brings up Scotland's 50 in the 6th over. And edge there to short third man from Catherine Bryce. Keeping the scoreboard ticking. 4 runs off this over so far. So as I've said, Scotland's main concern will be to avoid losing wickets. And they end up, I think, running another single, or do they? Yes, they do. 5 off the over, and after 6 overs, Scotland are 52 for 1. And that is the end of the power play. Well, I think if we take a look at the way Scotland started, they certainly had a fine start. Got pegged back a bit when Charlie Dean took the all-important wicket of Catherine Fraser. I think Catherine Bryce has now come to a conclusion that any more wickets lost would be disastrous as far as Scotland are concerned. So the key challenge here now is for Scotland, obviously, to keep their wickets intact. And with the power play over, of course, England will be able to keep their fielders wherever they like. So Scotland are now going to have to play very circumspectly, you could say. But England as well are not out of the woods just yet. They've got 4 people watching online, so I'm really grateful to you. And in fact, switched on the camera. Like I said, one of the reasons why I had the camera off was because I was, eating something. And I mean, what can you do? You have to sort of satisfy your hunger. But eating on camera is not the best look. As far as some other fixtures taking place today in the Football World Cup, I can tell you that, of course, later on, Germany are going to be playing the Ivory Coast, and that's actually going to take place in about 25 minutes from now. Certainly should be a very exciting game indeed. But for now, it's back to the cricket. You can see some interesting costumes there. Hot dog with some chips, or French fries as you call them, with some tomato sauce and some mustard. I've given up eating all of that, though, to be honest with you. And now here comes Sophie Eccleston from the Kirkstall Lane end. Another left-arm spinner. Been usurped, of course, in recent times by Lindsay Smith, but still very much a key component of this England side. She'll be bowling round the wicket, left arm, to the right-handed Darcy Carter. Interesting battle this could be. And Eccleston strays down leg and ends up getting swept all the way to deep backward square leg. Just a single, though. Charlie Dean obviously will have to lean on the shoulders of her more senior teammates like Heather Knight and Danny White-Hodge for tactical advice. And Catherine Bryce there only succeeding in more or less bending back to mid-off. And that is Eccleston's 150th T20 international wicket for England. Scotland captain Catherine Bryce attempting to sweep, but not really getting to the line of that. You could say that the extra drift sort of did for her in a way. And so 13.3 overs remaining. You've got to say that's a pretty poor decision there from Catherine Bryce. The shot selection clearly lacking. And that is Eccleston's 150th wicket. Catherine Bryce, the Scotland captain, going for 6 off 9, failing again. And this is probably going to be the start of Scotland's collapse, you could say. As you can see there, that ball kept low. And Sarah Bryce, her sister who replaces her, gets off the mark with a double. Sophie Eccleston is only the 5th player to take 150 wickets. And the skipper, Catherine Bryce, again, a victim of some poor judgment. But let's see what little sis and wicketkeeper Sarah can do. Plays that back to the bowler, and so after 7 overs, Scotland are 55 for 3 and need another 146 runs to pull off what would be the most seismic of T20 World Cup wins. Now, of course, England have been on the receiving end of a poor defeat to an associate nation. A certain Kevin O'Brien, an Irish cricketer. And it was that fastest century in 50 over World Cup history from 50 balls against England in 2011. And that helped Ireland pull off a magnificent win, batting second in the World Cup in Bangalore, winning with 5 balls remaining, 3 wickets to spare. What an innings they played. So Danny Gibson, of course, you had that drop catch earlier on, comes into the attack. The first ball is played all the way down to, you could say, mid-on there by Darcy Carter. And that brings Sarah Bryce on strike. So will this Bryce be right? Now the run rate for Scotland has started to dip all the way below 8 and over. The required run rate has now increased to nearly 11.5. So as I've said, lose a wicket or two, and then Scotland start to panic a bit. I think it's also fair to say that with the great level of experience that England have, they're able to take advantage of any kind of nerves. And Sarah Bryce does play that all the way to deep backward square leg, just for a single though. This is, of course, Women's Cricket Week, so do please check out T20worldcup.com/Women's Cricket Week for more details. 4th ball from Danny Gibson, right arm, medium pace over the wicket. And that is nicely played there, but it doesn't quite have the force to take it all the way to the boundary. So that'll be just a single all the way to deep square leg. Darcy Carter there. Bit more force, and that could perhaps have gone to the boundary. And obviously with Danny Gibson bowling, she's probably going to try to look to take the pace off the ball a great deal. And that's a fine delivery there, angling into the batswoman on her leg side, and it's played all the way down to fine leg for single. 4 singles from the over so far. And you can see the concern starting to appear on the faces of the Scotland supporters, notwithstanding the very public smiles. Last ball. And that could have been perhaps a sharp return catch there from Danny Gibson, but instead it becomes a good piece of fielding that brings about another single. That takes Scotland to 60 for 3, 5 from the over, of course. And they need another 141 runs from the remaining 12 overs. So you can see the run rate has now literally gone up to near 12 and over. At the beginning, it was barely above 10. Now it's close to 12. And after 8 overs, Scotland have now fallen slightly behind England. England, of course, with Dunkley and Capsey playing brilliantly, were going great guns. Eccleston back into the attack, and her first delivery is played down to long on there by Darcy Carter. And this is, of course, the last ball of the previous over. And I'm not too sure she's got the distance to evade the fielder there. Well, actually, she does evade the fielder because it doesn't even go anywhere near her. So Sarah Bryce is a bit fortunate there. Another single to Scotland. All singles won't do it. They will start to want to get a few boundaries. But they are keeping the scoreboard ticking. Nice single there down to mid-up. So when you take a look at this length, and that is finally hit, but again, not having enough power to really give it the elevation and the distance it needs to go to the boundary. And once again, single down to mid/long on. Let's say long on. And another ill-attempted sweep there, this time from Darcy Carter. And Eccleston gets her second wicket in as many overs. .64 for 4 now. Oh, man. Have I got it wrong again? Oh, man. Jumped the gun. They were 64 for 2, having lost Fraser and Catherine Bryce. Now they're 64 for 3. My apologies. Really have no excuses. Megan McColl coming in. Not the best day for her in the field. And I think it's fair to say she owes her side more than a few runs. She gets to face the last ball of Sophie Eccleston's second over. And that goes for a bye, and they're happy to run for the single. Completely missing both the batswoman and the wicketkeeper. And so with 11 overs remaining, Scotland have lost 3 wickets, not 4 as I would have thought, but the required run rate has now gone to more than 12 and over. And you've got to say here that this can only really end in New England unless they can really make a go of it down the order. Certainly had some chances against the West Indies as Freya Kemp comes into the attack. Left arm over the wickets to the right-handed Megan McColl, and Megan McColl is able to sort of play a slight paddle sweep beyond the wicketkeeper, goes down to the fine leg boundary for 4. Welcome runs for Scotland. Amy Jones nowhere near that. Freya Kemp, of course, starring with the ball earlier on. And the second ball is a dot ball. Wide of the off stump this time, so she gets the line right. And the batswoman only succeeds in playing that to the mid-off field. And Eccleston now is still joint top of the wicket tally for the tournament with 7. The 2 other bowlers have joined her. Freya Kemp hoping that she can recreate some of that magic with the ball against Sri Lanka here against the Scots. And that is nicely played by Megan McColl all the way down to cover for a single. That delivery from Kemp goes straight through to the wicketkeeper. Dot ball. So Scotland once again, after a great start, just fading a bit as the sun fades over in Leeds. And that is high in the air. That could be caught. No, it's not. Charlie Dean and Sophie Eccleston were running after that, but neither of them were really in a position to even attempt to catch it. More frustration, really, because England would have loved another wicket. Sarah Bryce there slicing that, really. But Eccleston misjudging that. And that's another 2 runs to Scotland's total. Last ball of Freya Kemp's over. That's a single to end it from Sarah Bryce, and she will keep the strike. 8 from the over. Scotland is 73 for 3. And we are at the midway point of the innings. I sort of jumped the gun when I had sort of typed that it was that they had lost an extra wicket there. But of course, now they're at the midway stage. Scotland know that unless they really start turning it on again in the middle order, they've got no real chance. Captain Charlie Dean back as the attack. And Sarah Bryce has probably heard my thoughts. She slaps that all the way down to the deep extra cover boundary for 4. Beautifully played. Heather Knight was never. And that should be called a wide, and that is. So England now going to have to be really careful that they don't start giving away these needless extras. That is, of course, the second extra that England have bowled. Delivery. Played all the way down to mid-wicket. Does that go to the boundary? Yes, it does. Danny White-Hodges' desperate dive. Not enough to stop that going to the boundary. Now it's England's turn to be sloppy in the field. Dean goes round the wicket, and good piece of fortune there from Sarah Bryce, who plays that inadvertently onto her foot. It goes back behind her, but she avoids being stumped. Dean once again round the wicket, hoping to stop the flow of runs. And they run a single comfortably enough despite the efforts of Amy Jones throwing the ball at the bowler's end. 10 runs from the over, so these are useful runs. Not too sure they're going to be quite enough. Scotland have played some really fine cricket this tournament, but you know, they've got to literally look back on everything and say they just haven't been able to maintain the composure, maintain the consistency required. But you get this feeling that the more tournaments they play, the better they will get. And that is a fine shot from Sarah Bryce. All the way down to the fine leg boundary for 4. 15 runs off the over, and that takes Scotland to 88 for 3. The significance of that is that it brings the run rate up to exactly 8 and over. They still need another 113 from 9. At over 12. And of course, you can see the graphs there. England really, got into the groove around about the 17th over after they lost that wicket. I think it was Heather Knight that went out, but then Danny Gibson and Freya Kemp literally switched on the afterburners. Speaking of Danny Gibson, here she is back at the attack. 9 o'clock in Leeds, and it's still clear. And Megan McColl hooks that over the wicketkeeper for a 4, all the way down to the third man boundary. Another diminutive player, Megan McColl, and certainly very good at playing the hook shot. Second delivery of Danny Gibson's over. And that is some fine hitting from McColl, but a little too fine, sadly. Finds the fielder over there at the deep mid-wicket boundary. And Scotland lose their first wicket, the 4th wicket. And now I've learnt my lesson. Make sure I have a good meal before I do this commentary work. Unfortunate for Megan McColl, I think she sort of fell to a bit of a rush of blood. Really loved the prospect of, cooking her way to glory there, but played that shot a bit too well and only succeeded in finding Lauren Bell there at a deep square leg / mid wicket. Priyana's Chatterjee took a wicket, but also had that expensive dropped catch. It was a difficult effort, though, it has to be said. Right-handed batswoman gets off the mark, playing that down to deep mid wicket for a single. Trying to go aerially, but the fielder was there for a reason. Deep square leg it was, 58 metres from where Megan McColl hit that. Disappointing way to end proceedings there. And Sarah Bryce sort of slices that, wouldn't say slice, but sort of slaps that all the way through the covers, and that'll be a couple. Two balls to go. And that is wonderfully played through the covers there, but Lindsay Smith is there to clean up at deep cover. So all Scotland can do right now is keep the scoreboard ticking and then look for boundaries later on in the innings. Last ball. That is sort of guided all the way to point for a single. Sarah Bryce keeps the strike. Scotland are 97 for 4. 8 overs remaining. Need 104 more runs. Exactly 13 and over. 2 sixes in a single, 3 fours in a single. Lauren Bell back into the attack. Chatterjee sort of plays that deep square leg. That'll be a single. It's an amazing promotion going on in England for the tournament. So they're still going well at about 8 and over or thereabouts, Scotland, but they need to really up the rate. And Chatterjee there playing that down to mid on there for a single. Of course, some more shots from earlier in the day, including seeing the trophy being placed on the platform. Fine shot that from Priyana's Chatterjee, but straight to the deep square leg fielder. So again, this is the frustrating part. You see the batswomen there starting to play a bit freely, play some shots, but just not really able to get the runs they need. But that does bring up Scotland's 100 in the 13th over. And that is a wonderful lofted drive there from Sarah Bryce. And Bryce is right. All the way for 6, down to points. I think Lauren Bell might be willing to see the funny side of that, but I'll tell you what, if that were me, I would not be a happy chappy. Oh, that is gorgeous. Short, wide, and hit me written all over it, as they would say. Sarah saying, thank you very much indeed. Right. 2 balls left. And Bryce is able to play that all the way down to the deep mid-wicket fielder there. That'll be another single. So 10 runs off the over. Useful runs. And, of course, at around about this stage, you could say that England are only slightly ahead. They've scored 2 more runs and lost 1 less wicket. But, again, Scotland just don't seem to have anyone who can really do what Danny Gibson and Freya Kemp were able to do in the latter overs of the innings. And Priyanas Chatterjee walking across the offside, trying to play that, but with no success. 10 runs off the over, though. And Scotland are now down to needing 94 more runs from 7 overs. I just wonder if they've probably written off this game and they're just looking to try and have some fun out in the middle, like the Dutch did. And there is Charlotte Edwards, making history as the first ever winning captain of the World T20 Championship. And that is nicely played down to mid-off. The batsman run for a single. Went to Charlie Dean, who had a shot at the stumps, but I think Bryce was home safely. Lindsay Smith, of course, into the attack, and her second delivery is hoiked all the way down to deep backward square leg, but only for a single. Lauren Bell is quite quick when it comes to running, and she was certainly able to prevent any real damage being done. Dot ball there with Sarah Bryce hoping to try to play that to third man, but only succeeding in edging that to the short third man fielder. But she does go down the track, and she does only succeed in finding the deep mid-wicket fielder, Danny Gibson, who catches that quite expertly, and that is Scotland's 5th wicket. Powerfully hit shot, but didn't quite have the height or the distance. Lindsay Smith is ecstatic, gets her first wicket. And so the wicketkeeper, Sarah Bryce, sister of the captain, goes for 34 off 24. And 6.2 overs remaining and 92 more runs to score. It really has to be game over. I think Scotland will probably look at it as a kind of psychological victory if they can avoid getting bowled out. Can't say I'm surprised, really. I mean, obviously, Catherine Bryce had a lot of high hopes when she won the toss and opted to bowl first. They certainly bowled well enough in the very beginning, but didn't count for some pretty sloppy fielding, has to be said. And We have, of course, kicked off in Toronto, where Germany are playing the Ivory Coast, and it is goalless so far. Germany, of course, enjoying a resounding 7-1 win over Curaçao in their first game of the tournament. You would think that the former African Cup of Nations champions, the Ivory Coast, will be a much more different beast. Not too sure why there's this long of an advertisement break. Can't take too long for the next batswoman to come in. Of course, some shots there of Lindsay Smith with 2 balls to go, and the new batsman Pippa Sproul is in at number 7. I'm assuming she'd be more of a. Not too sure why she's batting so low if she did, especially if she didn't get to bowl. And I think one would assume that Elsa Lister had a bit of an injury, but that is not a bad way to get off the mark. Saved from being a certain boundary there by the efforts of Danny White-Hodge. It is 2, though. Nicely guided that down to backward point. Well done, Victor. We had the night cleaning up with the throw. And Sproul is able to get a single, and she will stay on strike as we go into the next over. So Scotland avoid the curse of Nelson, but they're 112 for 5. 6 overs remaining. Needing 89 more runs at just less than 15 and 0. Obviously, it's going to be my responsibility, my duty, or my pride, rather, to cover the England games, and I'm happy to do that. In retrospect, I do wish I was able to cover the New Zealand-Ireland game, but I tell you what, I still wouldn't put it past Scotland to get an upset, and it might just be against New Zealand. But anyway, Freya Kemp, left-arm seamer, coming back to the attack. Over the wicket to the right-handed Hannah Sproul. And Sproul plays that quite well. They decide to run for a second, and they're quick between the wickets, and they come back more or less in time. So, last 6 overs, they're probably going to want to score as many runs as they can. Lindsay Smith, obviously, providing a great deal of control and some variation. Not necessarily a wicket-taking threat. And Sproul plays that all the way to extra cover, and that would be a single. So they're keeping the scoreboard ticking, and I think Scotland obviously have come into this tournament knowing that they would be expected to, really compete for a place in the semi-finals like the men did back in 2024 when it was held in the West Indies. Very nearly reached the semi-finals, mind you, at England's expense. That's played high in the air from Priyanas Chatterjee. Freya Kemp's under that, and she catches it. So after a blistering display with the bat, Freya Kemp comes to the party once again with the ball. And seriously, it's like every dot ball, every wicket, you just think to yourself, this is why, Scotland are where they are at the moment. They definitely have the potential to do a lot better, and they certainly have some great facets to their game. I just think, though, that in terms of batting, they're not quite powerful. Now we come to the bowlers. So their challenge now will be to try and keep their wickets intact and avoid getting bowled out. Kirsty Gordon, what a big day for her. 2 wickets against her former teammates. It's a left-arm spinner. Now as a right-handed batswoman, she's got to try and do something here. And she ends up being caught in 2 minds about which shot to play and pops it into the air, but falls short of the bowler who's not going to get that. But she did get this return catch from Chatterjee, and I'll tell you what, that's poor sportsmanship, really, from that person in the crowd. You don't do that. You don't make that kind of a crying sign. Disgusting. 2 balls left. And Gordon's still not quite able to get off the mark. Kirsty Gordon coming in at number 8 would seem to suggest that she is quite capable of, wielding the willow, wielding the long handle. I don't know if we'll see that in play just yet, but that's going to be called a wide. So Kemp again has got to be a little bit careful that she doesn't stray too far. She's bowled well, though. 12 runs off her 1.5 overs so far. Now we have the last ball. And Kirsty Gordon ends up playing that down to mid-wicket. And it's only going to be a single, which means that she will end up on strike for the next over. 117 for 6, I should say. With 5 overs remaining. And already we've got a comment. Wants to know if I'm free to do the Protea women's game tomorrow. I'll let you know once I find out the time. Okay, boy? I'm a little bit surprised that I thought you'd be doing that in Afrikaans. And I think you know very well that my Afrikaans fluency is almost non-existent. Sophie Eccleston now back into the attack. She's taken 2 for 7 off her 2 overs so far. And Gordon is able to tip that all the way down to short fine leg, and that'll be an easy single. Still bowling round the wicket to the right-handers. And her high release point, she bowls in that 5 and 6 metre zone, averaging 11. Quite tall person, and I'll tell you what, Hannah Sproul was lucky not to get bowled there. I think she moved to the offside, trying to play the sweep, but not really getting to that ball at all. And in fact, it was the arm ball which drifted inward and very nearly left her bowled. And this ball as well, the third one, just not able to get that to that. That's played all the way to short third man, and they run a single. Yeah, so we might actually be going out as well for dinner to celebrate Father's Day. So thank you very much indeed for reminding me of that. And a single by Kirsty Gordon played down to mid-off, I should say. And Hannah Sproul plays that all the way down to mid-wicket. Do they run for 2? No, they don't. So Hannah Sproul retains the strike. And England are now 121 for 6th, and it really won't be long now before the match gets over. Scotland need 80 more runs from 4 overs, 20 runs and over, 5 boundaries. Knock it off. No chance. Charlie Dean now back to bowl her final over. And I wouldn't say that England have been the best team alongside Australia, because let's not forget, England haven't really been tested. They played Sri Lanka. They were more or less expected to win, and of course have had these 2 games against Ireland and Scotland. And Hannah Sproul lofts that into the air and it falls short of mid-on, and that'll be a single. They haven't been tested yet. The first test will obviously be coming up when they play the West Indies, and of course it will mean coming up against Stephanie Taylor, who was of course captain of that West Indies team which won the T20 tournament, and Kirsty Gordon there sort of trying to play a sweep, not really a hoik, but that goes beyond the short fine leg fielder and goes down to fine leg for 4. So almost a paddle, not quite a paddle sweep, you could say, just sort of an accelerated hook, if you will. That's also quite nicely played by Gordon, down to mid-wicket for a single. West Indies also, as I say, but second in the group only due to run rate. But this is, of course, the same West Indies team that eliminated England from semi-final contention in Dubai when they last played the tournament. And Hannah Sproul is taking her turn to go down the fine leg route, and she gets a boundary for her efforts. Charlie Dean proving to be a bit expensive in her final over, but I don't think she'll mind. And good-natured Scotland fans there cheering every run, every boundary. Ten runs now off this over. Make that 11 as Hannah Sproul plays that to mid-on. So the best partnership that Scotland had really only came from the first wicket between Darcy Carter and Catherine Fraser, but once Fraser got out, you just knew there was a level of inevitability there with the way the wickets were falling and the runs were being dried up, and it wouldn't really last. Well, 11 from this over, though, you've got to say that it is far too little and far too late. Three overs remaining. 69 more runs. 23 and over. So a boundary off every ball. And ironically, that should get them home with a few balls to spare. I think if they do get to 150, they'll be quite happy with that, as Lindsay Smith comes back in to bowl her final. Hannah Sproul there going down the track and ending up playing / fending that to cover for a single. And this is a huge crunch game, which Hannah was talking about, which is tomorrow, of course, South Africa against India. And if it is going to be a fine shot there from Kirsty Gordon down to mid-wicket for a boundary, so they could end up with 150, which won't really be a bad total under the circumstances. The thing is now they need 64 runs from 16, so they are going to need every single ball like that to be hit for a boundary, and I think that's going to happen. Obviously, if they do get to 150 or 160, they can look at the day as more or less a good day, but just some poor fielding and that huge and blistering partnership near the end, taking the game away from Scots. But listen, Scotland have shown that they are capable of competing. And as I said, the Scotland-New Zealand game will be very interesting. And again, depending on the timing, but listen, I will keep in touch with you because let's just say if it's going to be an evening game taking place at 6:30 local time, I could be available for that in theory, provided, of course, if we do go out for dinner and come back early, I could be available for that. And of course, Lindsay Smith there, we now know, dropped a return catch there from Kirsty Gordon, which could have resulted in the wicket. 2 balls to go, though. Maybe she'll get another chance. No, that's played back beyond the bowler. They do run for a quick single, though. And that takes them to 139 for 6 with 13 balls remaining. Wonderful to see some fans with the salt eyes painted on their cheeks. And like I said, Bert, at about maybe 3 p.m. UK time, I will keep in touch with you and let you know what I'm doing. And, fine shot there from Gordon. Well fielded by Danny Gibson. But they do run for 2, and that takes their score to 141 for 6. 9 runs, of course, from the over. And with 2 overs remaining, they need 60 runs. Five sixes and over, 10 sixes in total. I don't know why I keep saying that, but it's been good fun covering today. I mean, not quite as, exciting or as cliffhanger-like as when New Zealand, the West Indies played Scotland or when New Zealand played Ireland. But I think England have certainly shown a great deal of ruthlessness, but the last thing they want to be known as is Sophie Ecclestone bowls her final over and gets hit for 4 once again down to fine leg. And that takes Scotland's total of 145. The last thing that they would want to be known as is, being flat track bullies, as it were. They thrashed Sri Lanka. They were made to work hard against Ireland. They should seal a convincing victory, a heavy victory here against Scotland. The West Indies and New Zealand are so much stronger. I think given how poor New Zealand are, you would back England to qualify anyway, but even then, England know that they simply cannot take anything for granted. And so I think despite the heavy nature of the defeat today, England will be hoping that Scotland can do them a favour by actually beating New Zealand in their next match. And New Zealand do look vulnerable. They do look vulnerable. And once again, it's right down the fine leg region where the Scottish batswomen are finding some joy. And that boundary from Kirsty Gordon has taken Scotland to 150. Could they end up with a 160 or a 170 total? I think as soon as Ecclestone released that ball, Gordon took the decision to move across her stumps and then, hoiked that really. And this time around, an attempted cut finds its way to Freya Kemp at what you could probably say would be gully, maybe. But they still run a single, and so another 10 runs from 4 balls. Maybe they'll get 160. If they're lucky, they could get 170. Still going to be a very, a heavy defeat, but they can certainly take a great deal of heart from how they've performed. And so with 1 ball left, Sophie Ecclestone has taken 2 for 22. Will it be 2 for more or 3 for 22? It's 2 for 23 as Gordon plays that down to mid-off. And so with 1 over to get, Scotland have reached a psychological barrier, so to speak, of getting to 150. They are now 153 for 6 with 6 balls remaining. Needing 48 more runs. 8 runs for every ball. Maybe a few no balls, 3 hits. Who knows? 8 sixes would be what they'd need, or 12 fours. Of course, a reminder that Australia are, of course, sitting pretty with 6 points. England should also end up with 6 points after today's proceedings. But India are hot on their tails. Lauren Bell with the final over. Slower ball there to Kirsty Gordon, who digs that out and plays that all the way to extra cover for a single. The Mexican wave there. Huge crowd at Headingley on a Saturday. Lovely to see some cricket tragics avoiding watching the World Cup on television, coming down here to Leeds to watch some cricket. England versus Scotland. Seldom, if ever, gets bigger. Right arm over the wicket. And Sproul goes down the track. And she pierces the deep extra cover mid-off field. And that's a boundary. So Scotland on course for 160. Sort of a back of the hand slower ball there from Lauren Bell, but brilliantly picked there by Hannah Sproul, justifying her inclusion today so far. And I think not too sure that they were going to get an LBW shout, and the batswomen run through for another single. So that takes them to 159. They could end up with 160. A few hits could take it to 170. And that is, of course, a leg bye. That should be called a wide as well. Kevin Cluster there, making it crystal clear that straying down the line is unforgivable, and that does, in fact, bring up Scotland's 160. So their remaining fixtures are against New Zealand at Bristol, and they end their campaign with a match against Sri Lanka at Old Trafford. I don't think Sri Lanka, in lieu of their poor net run rate, have a chance of going through either. But again, stranger things have happened, and certainly when Sri Lanka beat New Zealand, they announced themselves as more or less back in contention. Single down there to mid-wicket. 2 balls to go. Certainly hoping to reduce the margin of victory, the margin of defeat to less than 40. Should be able to do that. Gordon and Rainey have bowled 10 dot balls each. They play some very good cricket, but it's always the fine margins. Dot ball there from Lauren Bell. And of course, the margin of defeat will be less than 40 because England scored 200. 200 even. And that is very nicely played by Hannah Sproul all the way down to mid-wicket. They decide to run back for 2, but they're not going to get their second. So Scotland finish up on 162 for 7. In the end, you could say it's... I'll tell you what, if, they hadn't have conceded those that huge glut of late over runs, and also had those awful periods of misfielding, you could very well say that they would have been in this contest. But of course, as things stand, was really just a case of ladies against girls, so to speak, for want of a representative term. And I think once Scotland lost those wickets, they were never really in the contest. And with regards to the field, the bowling, I think they just got tired near the end, especially when Freya Kemp and Danny Gibson just went hammer and tongs against them. But 162 for 7 off 20 overs is normally a competitive total, and it would be enough to win some games, just not enough for today. And the reason why is because batting first after being inserted by Catherine Bryce, England scored 200 even for 5 after 20 overs, which left Scotland needing 201 runs from 20 overs to win, just over 10 and over. And they fell short by 39 runs. They needed 39 more runs, but with time running out, they could only score 162. And so a comprehensive win for England in the end by 38 runs, which takes them to 6 points after 3 wins, 2 of them very imposing, one of them, you could say, comfortable in the end, but they were still made to work. But they will, of course, face a very big test in the form of the West Indies. And, of course, the West Indies are led by Hayley Matthews, and they do have a certain Stephanie Taylor in their side. She was, of course, the captain when the West Indies won the T20 World Cup. And that's the scorecard, really. Another failure for skipper Catherine Bryce. A fine start from Darcy Carter and Catherine Fraser, but once Fraser holed out to Charlie Dean, you just sensed that it was really only the beginning of the end. And Bryce certainly kept her end up. McCall also started to hit a bit, but got out too soon. Sproul ended up being run out off the last ball, and Kirsty Gordon completing a good day with her 2 wickets and her 20-odd runs late down the order. Sophie Eccleston, best bowler, best economy rate. She's certainly getting back into her old groove, so to speak. And when it came to Scotland's batting, I think they were just under the cosh from the moment they lost Catherine Carter. They started brilliantly, but you just knew it was never going to last very long. Any updates on the football? Well, this could potentially be a shock to the system. The Ivory Coast have taken a lead. Frank Kessie on the half hour. Gandhi Amande starring down the wing. And then there was, of course, a shot by Amar Diallo, which was blocked, but then Frank Kessie was on hand to slam home the rebound. And as far as the cricket is concerned, England with the bat, just too powerful in the end. Dunkley coming back into form quite brilliantly, Capsey providing brilliant support, and then Freya Kemp and Danny Gibson, they literally just turned on the afterburns at the end. And it was that late over batting, those 61 runs in those 3.3 overs, that really, broke Scotland's back. And it proved to be the difference as well, because Scotland did get to 162. It's all about the fine margins in T20 cricket more than anything else. Top performers, of course, Dunkley, Kemp with her 39 not out of 16, and Sophie Eccleston with 2 for 23. We're going to find out who the player of the match is, and I will let you know who it is. Okay, so confirmation that it was the England batswoman Sophia Dunkley with 57 that was awarded the player of the match. She was, of course, awarded that. And as I said, England now with a net run rate of 2.49, sitting pretty at the top with 6 points. I think the only way they cannot qualify for the semis would be if they were to lose to both the West Indies and New Zealand. But if Scotland do the impossible and manage to beat New Zealand, then that pretty much ends New Zealand's title defence and their hopes of making the semi-finals, and England and the West Indies should be more or less confirmed. New Zealand, of course, have had a lot of struggles this tournament and can count themselves very lucky not to have been beaten by Ireland yesterday. And that was a game, of course, I now in hindsight wish we could have covered, but nobody predicted that Ireland would make it that competitive. Nobody did. But Scotland are still proving that there are some things about their game to really like. And I mean, that Scotland-New Zealand game now becomes very key, because if New Zealand lose that game, that pretty much confirms that England and the West Indies will more or less play in the semi-finals. I know people say I shouldn't rule out Sri Lanka. And Sri Lanka, of course, are still very much in the tournament after their fine win against New Zealand. But their net run rate is simply not their best friend. Let's go to the tables, courtesy of Cricinfo, of course. Yeah, and if you take a look at the table, of course, Sri Lanka's run rate is at negative 2.04. They have won one, but they've lost to England, obviously. That was a heavy defeat. And they are still, of course, to play Ireland and Scotland and the West Indies. So in theory, they still have a chance of making the semi-finals. But if they don't beat the West Indies, then, you know, that's pretty much their campaign also done and dusted. And of course, as was mentioned earlier, Australia in the driving seat. India still hot on their tails with a fine net run rate of their own. And of course, don't forget, India have to play Australia and South Africa, and they will be playing South Africa tomorrow. We will, of course, let you know if we will be covering that tomorrow on the channel. Of course, tomorrow being Father's Day, I think the boys have made it clear that they would like to watch the game with their families. Of course, big up to Janlu for doing an Afrikaans watch-along of the rugby final as well. Hanno obviously did a watch-along of his own, actually in company with Hamish from the Kiwi Lads. Big up to him, by the way, and big up to that channel too. Fine channel, of course. And maybe for the upcoming Rugby World Cup, we could see some more collaboration between the two channels. That would be really, really nice. And whether or not I'll get to do some work for that will remain to be seen. I did get some TV coverage of the Rugby World Cup thanks to the wonderful people at the Sony Sports Network, where I am. But that's really the limit as to how much rugby I can watch in terms of international rugby and even first-class rugby from overseas. So once again, confirmation that England win by 38 runs. And we are going to speak to the captain, starting with Catherine Bryce. Maybe Charlie Dagnall's got their ear. We'll find out. Well, it wasn't Charlie Daggle, it was Ebony Rainford Brent, and obviously she was speaking to Catherine Bryce, who was quite happy with a lot of the things that were done. Certainly in terms of chasing, you know, her batswomen went up and showed a great deal of intent to try to get close to the target. They were never really going to get as close as they would like, but they still, you know, kept fighting. Credit to them. And of course, the consequence of that defeat is that their run rate has just slightly dipped under 0, so it is in the negatives now. And as far as the bowling was concerned, I think, you know, it was really the fielding that let them down more than anything else on the ground. Their fielding was quite sharp early on in the tournament against Ireland and the West Indies to an extent, but today I think they just didn't really have their focus very much. But they're enjoying competing against some big teams, and as I've said, their next game being against New Zealand, they're quite excited about that, and I would not be surprised at all if that match ends up close and New Zealand end up losing that game. And if New Zealand do lose that game, then that will effectively confirm England's passage into the semi-finals. And, of course, whether or not it will be the West Indies or Sri Lanka to join them will remain to be seen. Sri Lanka, of course, as I mentioned, have a very poor net run rate, and they will have to address that balance, of course, when they play. I believe I don't know if they're playing Ireland or the West Indies next, but we will find out, of course. And, you know, the action keeps continuing. It keeps coming thick and fast, and the games are proving to be very exciting, even if there have been some big totals, mainly thanks to England, of course. The matches have not been short of excitement and drama and intrigue, probably seldom more so than yesterday, which we weren't able to cover when Ireland came so close to shocking New Zealand. We did, of course, see Scotland give the West Indies a huge run for their money, and the West Indies somehow finding a way out of it thanks to their own experience. Former captain Stefani Taylor there with a big knock at 47. And it's basically that death batting in the death overs that costs Scotland from a bowling point of view. So they are going to have to sort of really work on that in a way. But the more work they do, the better they're going to get. And I think that goes without saying. Now, of course, as Hanno's mentioned, tomorrow there will be a pretty big schedule of games. I will just, of course, you know, find out the schedule for tomorrow. Now, as far as the fixtures are concerned, yeah, so tomorrow, of course, Sri Lanka will be playing against the West Indies. That'll be at 3 p.m. local time, and at 7 p.m. local time in the UK, it will be... No, it's not local time. It's actually 10:30 in the morning local time. It'll be Sri Lanka against the West Indies. At 2:30 local time, it will be India and South Africa. And it could very well be that for that particular game, I may not be able to cover that, but we will have to see. But listen, Hanno, if you're still watching this, I will keep in touch with you and let you know what's going on here. And it could very well be that, you know, if we decide to, if we do decide that that we would like to go out to dinner, I probably won't be able to cover this. But again, whatever happens, I will let you know beforehand. So 2 big games tomorrow, and certainly with the potential to provide a great deal of intrigue. But of course, we are providing some amazing coverage of the Women's T20 Cricket World Cup. And I'm glad you're able to join us for today's game and all enemy clash, of course. Another recap, Scotland won the toss and Catherine Bryce opted the field. In the end, it was a little bit of a mistake as England, you know, in the death overs just pounded them into submission, scoring an even 200. And although Scotland needed 201 runs, they fell short by 38 or 39, ending up with 162 for 7, which meant that England won this match convincingly by 38 runs, going to the top of the leaderboard with 6 points from their 3 games so far. And their 2 remaining games will be against the West Indies and Sri Lanka. And that skipper Brunt will not be available against the West Indies, but she will play against New Zealand, not Sri Lanka. She will play against New Zealand in the final game. And with Dunkley in form, then we could see some tough decisions needing to be made. You know, there's no way that you can drop Sophia Dunkley after an innings like that. But then, how do you fit Captain Nat back as the lineup? So those are questions that are going to be asked, of course, and the Sri Lanka-West Indies game will certainly play a big role in deciding the fate of the group. If the West Indies do manage to win, they end up going on 6 points themselves, and you probably would say that that would end Sri Lanka's own hopes of qualifying for the semi-finals, because their run rate would pretty much not be able to recover from that. But again, if it's any consolation, I think they will end their tournament with some easy games against Ireland and Scotland. They will finish on 6 points themselves. And that's pretty much the way it goes. And South Africa, India as well will be crunched, because with India doing so well, South Africa cannot afford to lose. And we will, of course, every match we do cover, we will provide you details of what happened in the previous matches. But today's been a pretty good day. Been quite busy for me in terms of work on the computer, and I've had to sort of rush back and forth in between to get some food in my tummy. But I enjoy doing this, and I'm really glad to continue to do this. And I'm really glad to be able to provide some commentary on these matches, which I enjoyed doing a great deal. And again, Hanno, it'll remain to be seen. I like the way the West Indies look. I think all teams so far have shown some weakness with regard to their fielding in a way. And even Charlie Dean said to Ebony Rainford-Brent that she would have liked to have bowled a bit better and not let South Africa, not let Scotland, I should say, come so close today. But with the batting, you know, she couldn't be any happier, it has to be said. Anyway, it's time for me to end it here, and any updates on the football? It is half-time in Toronto, and Germany are at the risk of being at the wrong end of another World Cup shock. And this is another reason why, Germany might not be favourites to win this time around. And of course, back to the cricket. We'll just end it here by saying that England, I think they were, of course, very convincing with the bat, maybe not quite with the ball. And their next tests will be coming up against the West Indies and New Zealand. They should be able to provide a good performance and confirm their passage into the semi-finals. Anyway, thanks a lot once again to all of you who've watched, and thanks a lot to all of you who keep supporting the channel, subscribing, liking these videos, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow, but if we can't, we will definitely see you next time for another match from this fine tournament. And until then, I hope you will enjoy what's left of your Saturday. Have a great Father's Day Sunday. Celebrate with with your fathers, and you must make sure you get to know them, because as Baz Luhrmann wonderfully said, you never know when you could lose them for good. And on that solemn note, it's time for me to sign off. God bless you all. See you soon.